He was our example of the Word becoming flesh and moving into full maturity. That he was always in full maturity in my thinking. But this person has the golden crown on his head. It speaks of his thinking. And the sickle is in his hand. Where is the sickle? In his hand. The preposition in means in the middle of his hand. What is a hand but a part of your body that has five extensions? When I see the sickle is in his hand, what I see is that the way God brings harvest and reaping, the process of reaping in your life is through the fivefold ministry. And didn't we just read that in Ephesians 4:13? I feel that I just read that. You see how the Bible is a book of patterns, and the Bible is a book of parallels. And so what I hear Paul saying, I hear John saying, and that the way that he brings about this harvest is he does it in his hand. The sickle is in the hand. And so while I do believe there may be an alternative way to view the one sitting upon the clouds, I have to be honest with you, I do kind of believe it's Jesus. Okay, that's kind of where I am. You want to believe something other, you can, and you have a right to do that. But I kind of tend to see that who else has the authority. Now, I have the right to change my mind on that, but at this point in my life, I believe the one who's harvesting and the one who's wearing this crown is, well, anyway, let me, I've written out every significant word in this verse. I just don't want to spend time right now going through every single one of them. You can read that. But I want you to notice that in your notes, I've taken every word in Revelation 14:14, almost every word, I believe, and really broken it down. So when you go back to verse 14 and study it, I want you to look at every single part. Any mechanics in here? I know Chuck is mechanical. Anybody else mechanical in here?
I know a little bit.
I'm non-mechanical. George, you somewhat mechanical?
Some.
Steve, you mechanical? You like I am. So you mechanical? A little bit. You're a little bit mechanical. Well, you know, have you ever taken something apart and if to diagnose something, a mechanic ever taken something completely apart somewhere in your time? George, you ever done that? Chuck, you ever done that? And you look at all these different parts, but to a non-mechanical person, it looks like chaos. Well, what's all that? How are you ever going to be that big? But to someone who understands the bigger picture, all of those parts speak of something much greater. And see, when you look at the different words in the verse, I don't want you to just have a bunch of words on the table. I want you to pull all those words together and see something much bigger. I want you to get the full picture of what that verse is saying. Because that's how we come into resolution of really understanding everything. All right, let me start bringing this to an end. Okay.
Let me start a question.
Okay.
The only thing I see is that verse 15 says, another angel came out of the temple crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud. That's why I don't believe it's Jesus.
You don't believe it's Jesus. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Notice that Mark getting kind of, yeah, you got to move. I haven't moved a long time. A long time from then. Now watch this. Actually, in my notes, I argue that it's not Jesus either. So just for the sake of discussion, even though I'm not.
But who shall Jesus was?
His father.
Yeah.
Right, and that's a good point, and that's a good point. That's a good point, and I kind of argue that way in my notes. If we looked at this whole section of scripture that we've looked at so far, and if I could tie it together, because I really believe chapter 14, verse 14 is not disconnected from these other verses that we've been studying over the last couple of weeks.
Pastor Chuck, there's something that's I think why Jesus doesn't know when he will come is because the Father hasn't told him. If he told Jesus, because Jesus likes to tell us all kinds of things, he done told us when he's coming.
Okay, that's a way of looking at it. And that's what's interesting, George, and that's what's allowable, is that we have the ability to think and come to conclusions and think and make I think it's, as long as you believe that, and you know why you believe that, I think, man, listen, run with it. I just think, I think you could be right. We'll see. We'll see as we progress in this chapter. Now, I know a little bit about what's coming up, so I'm not going to put myself in any one corner or the other, because I kind of know where we're going in all of this. All right, so if I could take tonight's, and I haven't gotten into verse 15, but verse 15 really recaptures verse 14. Well, before I sum it up, let me say this about verse 15. Here's the difference in 14 and 15. In verse 14, there is a command of urgency given to us to experience something. So you're told to see something, experience it. In verse 15, we're told to listen to something. Okay? And so it's kind of a different admonition. This is good. In verse 14, you're told to peer into the heavens and behold the cloud, elevation. In verse 15, the voice isn't coming from the heights of heaven, it's coming from within the temple. Verse 15 isn't talking about an angel flying in the heavens with a trumpet in its mouth telling you something different than verse 14. What it is another aspect of the message, because one of the things I just can't sit down and say this. I'm just going to stand up for a minute. One of the things, if you learn anything about the way I view Scripture, please understand this. Sometimes the word that I read, I'm experiencing it. I'm experiencing that word as I'm unfolding it in my study time. But that same word at another time in my life is like a trumpet that sounds from within my spirit. And they're not in conflict with one another. It's just different ways the Lord brings forth the understanding of His Word. All right, let me say it a different way. Sometimes you can sit in church and listen to somebody speak and teach and say, oh, I get that. But then later, some other time in your life, you're at a moment where it's like a voice that comes out from within the temple of God, and you're like, wow, where did that come from? All right, let me say it a different way. I was at a Jimmy Swaggart crusade in 1981 at Richmond Coliseum, functioning as a security, which is pretty funny because I was 17 years old, 1982, I was 17 years old, and I wasn't about to I wasn't a bodyguard, or I was in Secret Service, because while I love Jimmy Swaggart, I wasn't about to step in front of him if there ever came an opportunity to do so. At 17, I just be honest with you, I wasn't that grown up. So, but here's why I took the job. Because at 17, I stood behind the platform and talked to John Starnes and the other guy, I forget his name now, and Donnie Swaggart. Donnie later became a real good friend of mine, still is a good friend of mine. But I had the chance to walk with Jimmy and Francis from their limousine to the back of the stage when they arrived, and at the end, walk with them from the back of the stage to their limousine. And the whole time, I did this for 3 nights in a row, and the whole time I did this, he would look at me and he would say, son, did you enjoy tonight? What did you think? And he would talk to me. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I got to talk to Jimmy Swaggart for about 4 or 5 minutes every night. And that was a big deal to me because he was like this huge, still is. I mean, just a huge person in my life. Well, the last night I was able to come out from behind the platform because he had an altar call. If anybody wants to get the baptism of the Holy Ghost, it was afternoon Sunday service. I've been in Pentecost all my life, never been baptized. I went out there, I stood in with hundreds and maybe 1,000 people, and we with our hands raised, and he started singing, there is a river. And man, this whole orchestra was playing, or the band was playing, and the singers were playing. And it was powerful, man. And I just felt like the river of God came upon my life, but nothing really happened. And I thought, man, I was kind of disappointed. So a friend of mine, Kenny Worth, and I were on our way riding home from the event. In his little car, we're riding home down 95, and we're talking about whatever. And all of a sudden, I start speaking in tongues. And he looks at me like, why am I doing that? I'm looking at him thinking I'm not doing it on purpose. We ride all the way home. I can't even talk in English. We go back to his house. We're trying to get into this house. I'm trying to ask him, does he have his key? And I can't even speak in English. We go in the house, we're sitting around, and finally he gets discouraged. He says, man, look, if that's all you're going to do the rest of the night, you might as well go home. And I couldn't even explain myself because everything that came out was like, it was like the faucet had turned on and I couldn't shut the valve off and it was flowing. And and it's never happened again like that in my life. But it was powerful to me.
Amen.
And I thought, why at one moment something happened, but it was a little bit later that it really became experiential. I'm telling you guys, what's so beautiful about this verse is that the way God moves in harvest is that one minute he commands our attention to see something, but it's in another moment a message moves us into hearing not something that's fallen out of the heavens, but something that's coming out of the temple.